All right, so thanks everybody for joining us today, talking about what if analysis in Power BI. My name is Gregory Petrosian. I'm a business transformation consultant at CSG Pro. That's a trumped up name for basically saying I love Power BI, we love doing BI work, hopefully we can work together. So that's my just quick spiel. We do a lot of Power BI training and mentoring. We also do data warehousing work, data strategy work. One real area of interest has been managed BI solutions. And another area of our home, we work in custom application development. And later on, we'll be talking about this proof of concept offering that we will have to implement exactly what you'll be seeing today. So I do want to give a quick plug about our blog. If you haven't heard about it, we blog about all things Power BI and data analytics. We have video tutorials, product demos. We have recordings from our Portland Power BI user group that gets published here. A lot of free training resources. Definitely check it out at csgpro.com/blog. And if that's just too much for you to kind of keep track of, we make it really easy. Just sign up with your email to subscribe from csgpro.com/subscribe. Once a week, we'll fill your email with Power BI training videos, dashboard and day events that are coming up, Portland Power BI user group and other user group information, webinars such as this one, and much more. I do want to quickly touch base on why we love Acterys and why we think Acterys and Power BI is a fantastic solution before handing it to Darren. So the reason why we partnered with these guys is we like Power BI being the one platform to rule them all. Rather than having to have multiple tools you work with for planning, budgeting, reporting, BI, Power BI is such a robust and enterprise-wide tool that it truly can handle all your needs. Speaking to the enterprise, the fact that Acterys does write back and connects to your enterprise data pipeline, it does not create a silo. Where the data is going is exactly where your data warehouse is or where your enterprise is reporting from. It's a very easy to implement API. You don't need to build some one-off architecture just to make this write back or budgeting capabilities happen. They just have an API that it's a few ports to open up with your IT team and you're good to go. And also Acterys supports write back for many, many different targets. As much as I love to think everybody's in the Microsoft, drinking the same Microsoft Kool-Aid I am, there are many other targets that need to be supported when you do budgeting and forecasting, and Acterys enables that. So with that, I will shut up and I will give the mic to Darren and Ruben of Acterys, and they're the ones that are going to be driving this awesome webinar.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Greg, and welcome to everybody. My name's Darren. My colleague's name's Ruben. Excited to be talking to you today on Acterys. So just a couple of slides before we dive straight into the product. Just to kind of lay the foundations. I always like to make sure that everybody is on the same page, because when you talk about data modeling and what if analysis, sometimes people have a lot of different definitions and different ways of doing it as well in an organization, let alone budgeting, forecasting as well. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always on there, so it'd be great to hear from you. So I'm going to make a couple of assumptions here, and what we're going to show you in the next 30-45 minutes is really condensed. There's so much more. We could take an hour or 2 hours to show you all of the capability, but we're really going to focus today around data modeling within the Power BI environment and also what if analysis as well. And I'm assuming that you either, first of all, that you know what Power BI is, and you either currently use it or you're planning to use it within your organization. So that's the assumption I'm coming from. And also I'm assuming that in most organizations, you've got many sources of data within your organization, many source systems, whether they're accounting, ERP systems, sales systems, and you're trying to, get insights from all of those different systems. And that sometimes that can be, fairly challenging. in terms of getting a cohesive view across the whole of your enterprise. We don't mind where your data comes from, but you know, one of the great things that has happened recently, especially with the Power BI environment, in terms of reporting and analysis and business intelligence, is that whether your data lies in a particular source system, however you're trying to get insights from that, you can really unify all of that. And that really comes from a need of, or from most organizations, trying to get those insights from a reporting perspective. And generally that tends to fall on the back of good old Excel, simply because, you know, it's a familiar, easy to use end user type tool set, and it can collate information from a wide variety of disparate data silos within the organization. And really what Power BI has kind of brought to the fray is this idea of a holistic business intelligence and reporting layer, which you can use right across your organization to simplify it. So having a single version of the truth, whether you have a data warehouse, a single data mart, data model, which is collating all of your source data, a single version of how you're calculating and layering over logic within the organization. You want everybody to calculate things in the same fashion, and then obviously a single layer in terms of reporting and visualization of data. And that's fantastic, but when it comes to things such as data modeling, what-if analysis, budgeting and forecasting, unfortunately what you find is a little bit of a mess out there. You know, you have proprietary planning and forecasting tools, you may have legacy solutions for what-if analysis and data modeling, and you may have built, your IT department or your businesses may have built various point solutions for these purposes. And what tends to happen, again, is, you know, good old Excel gets pulled out to do your what-if analysis, offline, emailing that around, wondering who's got the right version of the spreadsheet and who's got the right number in the spreadsheet as well. I'm sure these are all more than familiar problems that most organizations face. And really what we're looking to do with Acterys is bring that unified approach for business intelligence, but also extend that for budgeting, forecasting, what-if analysis, and also data modeling as well. So we're a global organization. I'm based out of our US headquarters here in Chicago. We've got a wide variety of companies, all different industries, sizes, across the globe using Acterys. And so without further ado, let me jump into Acterys and we'll show you this working in practice. I'm going to turn my video off so we're using less bandwidth here. And let me pull up Acterys here.
Teams is quite the bandwidth hog, so
it is.
Smart move.
Stop presenting that.
And again, I'm just gonna make a note. If anybody has questions or comments as we're going, I'll be moderating the chat. Or if you want to raise your hand, go ahead. But we want to make this collaborative. It's a lunch hour. You're donating your lunch hour to be with us. So let's answer your questions.
All right. You should be able to see my Acterys screen, my finance dashboard here.
Yep.
So the important thing to mention here is we're not trying to force you down a particular route in terms of what-if analysis and data modeling, budgeting and forecasting. We want to keep it as open as possible as you're familiar with Power BI. So this is just an example, and this is based around a finance example. This is equally applicable whether you're doing what-if analysis around sales, marketing, inventory, price, volumes, etc. Same principle. We're not forcing you in a particular way. And however you want to run your business and your particular business process around that, however you want to lay out these screens as well, it's as flexible as Power BI because you decide what's on screen and how people interact as well. So just to give you some examples here, kind of in a traditional Power BI understanding of what-if analysis, you may have set up a screen like this with some KPIs, with some different visuals here, some filters and slices here. And of course, you know, there is a certain amount of technically what if analysis here. You know, I can go to a particular division, go to my Canadian division, go to a particular cost center, to a particular period. I can maybe drill down on some data here to a different level of detail. And so I'm, you know, technically I'm doing some what if analysis here, but what we see there to be is more kind of in the context of how do you write back data. And when you're writing back data, you can write it back to different scenarios, and I'll show you that in a moment, and you can set up as many different scenarios as you wanted to. So if you wanted to have a different what if analysis for, you know, every single day of the year, you can do so within Acterys. You've got complete flexibility. So this is just, so what we have here is we've got normal Power BI, we've got a number of different Power BI visuals that I'm sure you're familiar with, some KPI scorecards and things like that. This is actually one of the custom visuals that Acterys ships with. This is what we call our variance visual. You can very quickly and easily scan your whole organization and see where you need to focus. You can see that, you know, hey, you know, in this Intex division, everything looks green there. I'm probably okay, but hey, in this central division, I may want to have a further look as to what's happening here in this this red variance here. And I can do this, you know, by absolute value. I can do it by percentage. You can change that instantly. I can have this locked down so that I can only view this, but then also I can also enable write back. So right on this visual, without me having to kind of skip a beat, I can now, and as you can see, the tooltip here is completely dynamic. So I can see what the value was before, the comparison, the variance, and I can adjust this bar here. And if I'm happy with that, I can write that back to that centralized single version of the truth database. So just kind of the tip of the iceberg in terms of what if analysis. Let's have a look at something a little bit more traditional, let's say. So here's a more matrix view. So if you're doing some what if analysis or data modeling within Excel, you're a little bit more familiar with this. Again, this is just normal Power BI interacting with normal Power BI visuals and slices and filters. But what is different is this is a custom visual from Acterys. This is the matrix visual. And this is another one from Acterys for commentary as well, because we can also write back commentary as well as numeric values. So what I can do here is do my normal analysis that you're used to within Excel. So I can say, hey, look, let's drill down on my revenues. Let's see what the breakout my revenues are. Here I can drill down on my cost of sales or my expenses and do whatever investigation I want to on that level. But what's interesting here is I've got various scenarios that I can do my what if analysis, my forecasting planning against. As you can see, there's a whole variety of different scenarios here. But again, this matches exactly your business, what you want, but also gives you complete flexibility as well. So at the moment, I'm in my budget scenario. I may say, actually, that's not enough for me. I want to create a brand new scenario on the fly. Now, normally this would take you maybe going to IT, going to the technical expert within your organization to create a brand new scenario. What I can now do, I can edit effectively my data warehouse, the back end of Acterys, which is a SQL database. I can do that if I've got the relevant security rights myself. So I can say, okay, I've got the relevant security rights. I'm in charge of, you know, setting up scenarios. I can see all.
Darren, I want to just kind of jump in and say this is the great part about working with an API, where you can actually make changes to the semantic layer and to your scenarios just within this GUI in Power BI without having to call up IT, without having to have some crazy architecture. Acterys takes care of it for you just within this API they've built.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you as a business user with your Power BI knowledge, as long as you've got security access or been given security access, you can do this yourself. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to affect my scenario dimension. In this case, I've got all of these different scenarios set up. I can see somebody's been doing some planning for COVID-19. I want to do my own planning for COVID-19 as well to see how that's going to affect me in my department. So maybe I want to set up maybe a Corona 2 scenario. Now, I can have that affect the whole of my data model or a particular part. So as you can see here, certain scenarios are affecting in this case, just Australia or this particular division, that particular entity. I can have different weightings or what we call attributes, different calculations, etc., which are associated with that. In this case, I'm just going to keep it simple. I just want to set up that brand new scenario. So I can enter that in there. I can save it. Okay, my Corona 2 has been set up. Now that looked pretty simple, but what that's actually done is gone back to the SQL Server database. It's written whatever SQL code. I don't need to know anything about that or how to write SQL joins, etc. But it's done that all for me. And now what I can do is come back here, back to my planning sheet that I had before. And if I just refresh this sheet here, instantly this new scenario is going to be available for me to do some new what if analysis or planning or whatever the case may be within here. So I can see my Corona 2 scenario is instantly available. So very quickly and easily you can make structural changes, i.e. data modeling changes, all from Power BI without having to leave there, without having to know any technical, have any technical skills, etc. But let's have a look at something more on the data level. So let's have a look at our cost of sales. Of course, cost of sales in the Corona arena, age, should I say, are probably going to change. You know, so I can first of all do a drill down here. I can see, okay, you know, May, June. This what makes up my cost of sales here. But let's do some changes here. So let's say from this period onwards, I want to do some changes. So I can see my total cost of sales is $10,000 here. Presumably, because people aren't kind of going out on sales calls and things like that, that's going to decrease. So I can enter an intelligent allocation mechanism. So I can say overall, I want to decrease my cost of sales by 50%. So I just put D in there, 50%. Okay, hit enter. You'll see it reduces it to $5,000 there. If I just refresh that, that's going to now drive that $5,000 proportionally all the way down to all of the children within my cost of sales for that particular period. So it's done that proportionally. If there was nothing down there, it would drive it down equally. So you can do increase, decrease, copy values, and even something called write fill. So what I might say is, okay, I did that bit of what if analysis there. I can go back to obviously any of my other reports, see how that's affected my, you know, total revenues, total expenses, that sort of thing. But what I might want to say is actually for the rest of the year here, so everything beyond this period for period 7 or month 7, I want to make $5,000 as well. So I can say R minus 5,000 here. Okay, it's going to give me a warning that it's going to change a number of different cells. So if I'm happy with that, okay, and it's going to change everything to the right to 5,000, and then obviously drive that change down to the detail on that proportion. So very powerful way of writing back, entering data, doing that modeling as well as that what if analysis. And of course that updates the whole of my data model. What I might want to do is also add some narrative in there as well. So I can go to my commentary visual and then add whatever narrative I want to say, hey, I've reduced my cost of sales for the rest of the year, and that's what that change means. Moving on. So that's kind of more of a traditional way of kind of doing kind of your what if analysis. But let's have a look at something maybe a little bit more unique. Equally, you know, that was more of a finance example, whether you're doing that at a P&L level, a balance sheet level, etc., or whether you're doing it via, you know, individual product or product lines, etc. In this case, it's just a case of how you want to set up your report to do that type of what if analysis. But let's, as I mentioned, let's move on to something a little bit more interesting here. So maybe I want to do something on a visual basis as well. Okay, so I've got this time series type graph here, and I can now start my analysis or my what if analysis by adjusting the bars on this chart, which It's not allowing me to do. Maybe I'll. Here we go. All right. So as you can see here, so what I've got on here is some sort of target for this particular mountain line of product here. And here we've got a different scenario here that I'm planning for, doing some what if analysis around. And if you see when I'm moving these figures here, you'll see these figures moving here as well. So you can see where it was and where it's going to, and the percentage change and the percentage difference here as well. And you could do this at any level. I think I've been locked down just to do it at this level through my security. So very quickly and easily, in a much more visually orientated fashion, you can do that what if analysis. Again, I can come in here and comment. So in this case, the administrator said, you can comment, but we just want you to comment from a pick list of comments instead of just writing whatever you want to. So again, having some control over that. So you can pick from whatever commentary has been set up for you for that particular data point, and that's saved. And importantly, with the commentary, that's saved not to the report, but saved back to the SQL Server database, so that data point in the SQL Server database. Again, you may be in different departments doing different types of analyses, different types of data modeling. We want to give you as much breadth and capability and flexibility to do that. So your idea of what if analysis may be from a project planning perspective. So you can come in here, for example, and again, this is another custom visual, but this is now represented more as a project plan or a Gantt chart. And again, I can say, okay, what happens if we fall behind target on this particular task here? We're going to finish this one early. This one is probably going to, take a little bit more time. Unfortunately, there's going to be some more subtasks for this particular deliverable, etc. I'm going to have a brand new task that I have to create here because there's some dependencies that have been overlooked there. And again, you can, by scenario, by user, by product line, by customer, you can do what if analysis you wish to. Here you can see that full rich text editor. So you can say, we needed to change the close date, and you can format this in whatever fashion you want to, because this is a rich text editor. You can write as much as you wish to, and now that comment is saved there. So giving you a lot of different ways to plan and do your what if analysis based upon this. And as you can see, there's a myriad of different things, whether you're doing cash flow forecasting, whether you're doing CapEx planning or different analyses on CapEx. You can really let your mind go wild in terms of all of this. Just one thing I want to kind of point out here, all of this is controlled through security. So if you're not allowed to do some sort of analysis or write back, that's all controlled through your row-level security within Power BI. Also, there's a full audit trail, so you know that this user at this time changed a bit of data from this to that, or a piece of structure within the data, within the data model. So there's a full audit trail for governance purposes there as well. As you can see, we've got examples of HR reporting, CapEx planning, debt planning. You can really go wild in terms of that. What we're enabling you to do, giving you that write back capability to enable all of these possibilities directly from Power BI. So that's a very quick overview of our demo environment. But what I thought would be very useful is to show you how to create this and how easy it is to create these what if analyses and do data modeling from scratch. So I'm going to hand over to Ruben, who's going to show you from scratch and show you how you build all of these in the first place. Any questions as we're handing over to Ruben?
Yeah, it's been kind of quiet in the chat. So, if you guys have questions or even any thoughts on what we're watching or talking about, I'm happy to answer them. Or we'll just let Ruben kick into gear.
Sure, thank you. Thanks everyone for having a listen. As Darren took you through, there's a lot of great functionality you can achieve with Acterys. I think one of its most powerful attributes from my perspective is how quickly it is to get up and running. And you can actually create Acterys trial accounts on your own and do everything I'm about to do now. So hopefully within about 15 minutes, I can take you through creating an Acterys account using the Acterys modeler, which is the web-based interface that is utilized for administration of users and also for creating dimensions and cubes, which are the architecture that facilitates the write back and for basic browsing of data. Then I'll show you how you can connect to that through Power BI, use one of the Acterys visuals that Darren has demonstrated to be able to write back, and also just quickly how you can then connect to that same model through Excel. So these are all things that you can do as an end user, and all it requires is access to your data source, which in the case of this demonstration, and probably in a lot of your examples, will just be an Excel workbook. So if you want to at a subsequent time, you can come to app.acterys.com and create a trial account. I've created one a few minutes ago because it does take a few minutes to send through an email, which you need to verify. And you'll then be given an account. In this case, it's csglunch@acterys.onmicrosoft.com. And this is the basics of the Acterys modeler upon initial creation. So we can see here an area where we can administrate our dimensions in our cubes. And the cube is basically the data structure within which you'll be writing back. And the dimensions are effectively the ways in which you break it down. One of the most powerful aspects of the Acterys modeler is actually the cube wizard, which makes it very simple to just point to an Excel workbook or a SQL data source and literally click on which columns correspond to dimensions, which columns correspond to values, any additional attributes if you've got them, and I'll go through them in a minute. And it creates the dimensions, creates the cubes, and uploads the structure immediately to your own SQL database on the Acterys tenant, which you can then access through Power BI, through Excel, and any other kind of interface that you're using to interface with your data. So I'll just open up Excel to show you what this file looks like. Zoom in a little bit. All right, so this is just a flat file that we've used. It would look similar to something that might come from a general ledger or accounting system. So the first column is organization name. We've got what looks like maybe a journal ID. We've got a date, we've got account code, and then a bunch of columns that correspond to the account code. So what are called attributes that relate to the dimension. So name code, description, account class. Then we've got a month column and a year column, which is pretty handy. We'll probably actually use them in this demonstration, although you could also use the date column, and I'll take you through that in a little bit more detail. We have the data type, which is always actual here, and we'll call this the scenario dimension. Like Darren outlined, you can then create additional scenarios quite easily through the modeler, but you also want to be able to compare them to the actual. So this will create a scenario called actual and associate all of the data with it. We've got some tracking categories which look like they're additional information, which we won't bother with now, but you could create as additional dimensions. And importantly, we've got the value. So this is the number that will be imported at the right intersection of the dimensions to be able to provide analysis and then also write back if it's within another scenario. We've got a few other things here: combined account key, statement, source ID, we won't really bother with. All right, so taking that file, we come back to the modeler. We've got an accounting data set. Got it open already. This might be locked for some reason. All right, there was a lock on that file. All right, so now we've got a basic interface that's very powerful to be able to get all of that information straight into a cube and dimension structure that we can use. It's auto-filled the cube name here, but we'll call the cube finance. And then for each of these columns, we have to identify them along the manner that I just did. So the first one, org name, we're going to say that's a dimension because it's a way that we want to be able to break down the data. And I might call it company because it's a little bit nicer. Journal ID, we're not going to bother about. With date, again, you've got the options, and particularly for not so much for finance information, but there's other sort of maybe sales-based information or more detailed information that you actually want to analyze on a daily basis. Acterys will create the time dimension for you with the correct start and end periods and the granularity that is relevant to the data set, which again is quite powerful. Normally not so much used for financial information. And in this case, because we've got month and year as separate dimensions, we're going to go with that format. It's a little bit nicer to demonstrate graphically. Account code, very important, it's a dimension. And then for these other attributes, as we call them, we can just select again, it's an attribute and it belongs to account code.
Hey, quick question, Ruben. Kind of as tangential, at the project level, building out like a work breakdown structure, activities, setting up that type of scenario, like what is the time to do it? Is it as simple as kind of what you're walking through? Or is
so I mean, this is kind of, sorry, it's a good question. This cube wizard is particularly nice if you've got, one sheet, which often isn't the case, but sometimes you want to be up and running quite quickly. It's useful. Typically what you would do is you would upload the dimensions and the cube data separately because you often have the attributes that relate to a dimension in different files or different sheets. And I will briefly demonstrate that subsequent to this, but it's effectively just about having your data in a format that makes sense. As long as you've got it in a CSV, in an Excel sheet, or a SQL database, it's very quick to be able to set up the dimension structure. And it's also very easy to edit later. Similar to how Darren demonstrated the edit scenario, you can do the same thing with any dimension tables once you've created them. So you don't have to get it right the first time. With dimensions, they're very easy to edit. With cube structure, you do have to identify how many dimensions a cube has when you start. But again, if you get that wrong, it's not that difficult to recreate a new one. So it mostly comes down to the data preparation.
And so what I'm saying is it's basically minutes to hours to implement a scenario, not days to answer.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we'll have this done and accessible via Power BI and Excel within the next 5 or 10 minutes. So if you've got the files there, it's pretty basic. So we won't worry about every attribute for the account dimension. We'll come back to month and year, and we're not using the time intelligence function, so it's defining them as dimensions. Important not to forget our value over here. And then I think we're good to go. Look at value. All right, now if I click on create cube, it's going to identify we've got company, account code, months and years. I hit confirm. Acterys goes away for a little bit of time. Then if we come back to the home page, we can see here on the left-hand side, the new dimensions that have been created. So I've got account code. Here's the various account codes, the various attributes that exist. Company, months and years are quite straightforward. And we've got the cube, which is made up of those 4 dimensions. There is a very basic pivot editor here that you can use just to verify the data in the data structure. So I can see that there are some numbers in here. I can perhaps put years onto the rows. I might put account code on the columns and verify that there is a bunch of data at these intersections. So that's literally it. There is now a SQL database that has got these dimensions, got this cube structure, it's got the actual data, and it's able to be edited through this interface and then connected to by Power BI, Excel, or again, any other interfaces that connect to SQL Server, of which there's quite a lot. I'll just show you here as well. You also have the ability to edit dimensions similar to the way that Darren did through Power BI. So we can edit a dimension, we can paste from Excel, which is quite handy. We can add elements, which is just through this kind of GUI. And you can, in fact, also link these dimensions to Acterys in here, which we won't go through now, but which there's plenty of information about. If you're interested, please let us know. Darren also briefly spoke about security. There is also a log in here, and this log will show any changes that were made to the data, at which level, by which user. And this is pretty powerful from an audit perspective, and also from a rollback perspective, potentially. You can use this, again, this is just a SQL table that you can query, which is pretty powerful for amending changes or rolling back if there's something that a user is particularly intent on getting to. Any questions on the modeler or the way that it's created? While I wait to see if there are any questions, I'll just go through before, as I mentioned before, if you want to create a new dimension from scratch, not using the cube wizard, you just create this plus button, you press this plus button. You can either do it through Acterys or link it to a SQL data source. But if you do it through Acterys, you can just paste the data from Excel. So if you go to any table in Excel and either include or don't include the first row as column names, you can paste it here with no column names and hit OK, it will create the dimension. Or you can put the names here and just paste the data and it will create the dimension. So, if you've got your data across a bunch of different sheets, you've got one with your project names, you've got one with your customer additional data and whatnot, you can very easily come in here and literally just copy and paste from Excel. And then you go to create the cube and you just select which dimensions go in the new cube. So it's very easy to start modeling, additional kind of business areas. Once we're up and running with the modeler, let's shoot into Power BI. And one of the great things about Acterys is because it's created this SQL database for you in that tenant with your username that was provided at account creation, you can connect directly to it. So if I go to get data from a new workbook here, I go database, I go SQL server, hit connect. What you need to know is, this is obviously well documented, acterys.database.windows.net, AP, which is the prefix of all the databases in the Acterys tenant, CSG lunch. So direct query mode means it will always query the database. So if we're doing write back, this is important. In Power BI, a lot of the time you won't need direct query because Power BI will cache your data. Because we're going to be doing write back and making changes that we want to see the impact of immediately, it's important we select direct query. Hit OK, and then we'll be prompted with the security box. Actually, so I just logged in previously, but basically it's using the Microsoft authentication. You just select that you want to use Microsoft OAuth authentication. I type in CSG lunch at acterys.onmicrosoft.com and the password, and that's it. That security is passed straight through. There's no need for any kind of other configuration or complex details to access the SQL database. In this instance, we want to pull in the finance cube. So I just click on finance cube. I click select related tables, and Power BI will automatically get the other dimensions that I need. So months, years, account code and company. There's one other little step I have to take, which is to select OLAP service account. And this table just has the necessary information, the key and the service name that the Actus Matrix requires to enable the write back through the API. So right now we're just consuming the data through SQL, but once I create the Acterys visual, it needs to know how to be able to contact the Acterys API for that write back. So that's what that table's for. Load this. And then we'll see over here, we've got the cube and we've got the dimensions that we created with the various attributes. And we're good to go. So the next thing that we'll want to do is get the Actus Matrix. And we just go get more visuals. Acterys. There was a number of visuals that Darren took you through: comments, visual planning, matrix. We're after the write back and planning. Here's a little visual. And then it's initially kind of similar to a standard Power BI matrix to configure. So we're going to want the value, which is the amount coming from the cube. And then we'll put the account down the rows. We'll put years and months nested on the columns. And we'll put company code as a filter. And we'll just get rid of some decimal places. All right, so right now this just looks kind of like a matrix. But as soon as we configure it to connect to Acterys, we'll be able to write back to these cells directly. So there's a couple of steps for that. As I mentioned before, if we scroll down here, we've got a few fields that are required: user, principal, and key. And we grab two of them from the service account table. So we just put them straight in there. And the third we need to create. And this is because in the Power BI web service, the username can be passed through directly, but in Power BI, we actually need to define it. So all we're doing is saying, you're actually just using this CSG lunch at acterys.onmicrosoft.com account for now. And we drag that into current user. And then the last little bit of configuration, we go to the formatting tab, we need to tell it which cube, and it was the finance cube that we've created, and the database was CSG lunch. All right, so what that means now is I should be able to go up here and go, okay, for 2019, in January, this 12,000 is going to become 20,000. And that has written back. And now if I refresh it, which is a little bit slow in the desktop, typically in the web client, and I'll show you in a second, the refreshing is immediate. But in the design mode of the desktop, it takes a little bit of time, and we can see the January 20,000 has been written back. And what we can also do, as Darren demonstrated, is splash. So you can say, look, for 2019, for the whole period of the year, I want to increase. And we just need to enable that. It's kind of the last step you need to know. So if you go to the formatting tab, we search for splashing, we allow splashing at a parent allocate from a top-down perspective. And then I can use the same kind of operators, increase by 20%. And that's it. We've now got Power BI connected to a SQL tenant that we've created with the structure required, and we can write back directly to that. And with additional reports to any of the kind of stuff that Darren demonstrated today. I'll just show you the last kind of little bit that ties this all together for me. So if we save this. And if we publish it to the Power BI web service. We can then connect to this, this Power BI data set through Excel rather than SQL directly. And as CSG and Greg have been on about, that's basically gives you all the power of the way you maintain your models and the additional calculations and power and flexibility that you have in Power BI, you can then access through Excel directly. So you can actually connect directly from Excel to the Acterys SQL server, but by doing it through to a Power BI model, it gives you much more power and control. So we do need one little step for that.
Yeah, just the fact that you're able to build this on our call today is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's got better and better in terms of the wizards and the way things are understood. Like it's those little add-ons and steps make it super quick. If you've just got a workbook sitting around that you're trying to do something with an Excel, and it's a bit of a pain, you can very feasibly, if it's your first time, have it up and running and working within half an hour to an hour with your own SQL, using the Acterys tenant and your own scenario modeling and whatnot, and you're not limited by the way your model was created with Excel. And in fact, you can reintegrate it into it, which is what I'm about to demonstrate. So it's the interface has come a long way.
Totally.
All right, so I'll publish this again. Now, if we come to Excel, just wait for it to publish. Yeah. You can basically, using the Power BI plugin, you can connect directly now. So basically, connect to data, my workspace, CSG Launch, connect. Then you've basically completed that loop. You know, if you started off with an Excel workbook, now you're back in Excel, you can still do all of the things you wanted to do before, but you've got right back and the additional power of Power BI as well, which is super cool.
And then we got a question, and Ashita, maybe you want to go off mute just to kind of elaborate. You're asking, you know, how many calendar connections can be handled in a query or Power BI or from another database. So are you saying you have multiple date tables across these multiple different data sources?
Oh, hi, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, so it's just a question and behind, like how this behind the scenes Acterys or query can be handled. Like if we have 4, 5, 6 calendars and some person's times allocated on that and cost is based on that one. So that's just a question.
I'm not sure if I understand fully, but see if I can, if my explanation helps at all. Oh, you go on, Gregory, if you understand it.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is they have many different data sources, and there's date, you know, they have date, you know,
Yeah,
timestamp
calendars are
date
different
tables from different sources, right? And so the way you'd handle that, kind of like in a traditional data warehouse level, is you have a date, you know, a data warehouse date table that those map to. And so that's the semantic layer. This cube that we're talking about that can be built in Acterys or even built with a traditional data warehouse is what you'd want. And so what Acterys does here is the fact that you can make a cube very easily, connect to these different data sources, and have a pretty much like a master date table that these different sources are interfacing with is what you'd set up.
Yeah, that's right. And in the initial stages, you know, you could go through and create them individually if you wanted to. So there's no limit to the number of tables you can have that have a particular structure. They just have to have unique names.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if that helps at all.
Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, you answered my question. I mean, I'm looking something different here. So it's more related to the data warehouse.
Yeah, and
behind the scenes.
What Acterys does, again, is basically it's giving you the data warehouse capabilities via an API. So, you know, instead of having to build a data warehouse, if you need a master table, you know, wait for planning and budgeting, you can just do it within this tool and it spins it up for you already. Or you can just, you know, go the traditional route, either or.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So just quickly, what I've done here so far is, again, just consume the data that's coming from the Acterys tenant using a connection through to Power BI. What I can do with the Acterys Excel add-in is I can actually then connect back directly to the API. So using, again, the same login, so just my CSG Launch. And then here I can select the cube up the top. My one of the cubes, the finance cube. And then if I click on this enable pivot edit button, I can now actually write back to this same data set. So here's the 20,000 I had before. I'll change it to 30,000. I'll commit changes, and that's written back to the database. So now I can use either Excel or Power BI to be able to go through the Acterys tenant to consume it using SQL and Power BI and to write back anywhere across that equation. So that's a very, very quick connect to Power BI, connect to Excel, and be able to write back. Obviously, your data structure will be a bit different, but hopefully this combined with the degree of functionality that Darren took you through gives you an idea of how you might get started. Any other questions?
Don't be shy if you got questions, or again, if you just want to share your lunch with us, happy to do it. Feel free to jump off mute. I hope this time was eventful. I feel very strongly that Acterys is a great tool, and also we at CSG Pro feel strongly that the more you can bring into Power BI as a platform, more business processes, all the better. And the fact that Acterys has already cracked that nut for planning and budgeting is a great option.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one other thing to reiterate is this is a fairly new concept with a lot of people. So sometimes seeing is believing. So the proof of concept is a very good way to go. In a matter of a few days, we can get a proof of concept working with your data, with your structure, etc. So you can actually prove that to your stakeholders and kind of further invigorate the conversation around Power BI and additional capabilities here. So, please take us up and contact CSG around that, and we can definitely discuss how we can move forward with that sort of approach.